Of all the demos we've had here on the Gamespot stage at San Diego Comic-Con, this one is by far the most populated, as you can see. Joining me on the couch, I have Robert Conkey from Activision and Kuroka-san and Shirahama-san from Platinum Games here to talk about The Legend of Korra. Gentlemen, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Very excited to have you here, especially you guys from Platinum who have flown across the sea to talk about Legend of Korra. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, こちらこそ.
All right, so Legend of Korra, let's talk about it a little bit. Give a quick overview because I think a lot of you folks have probably heard of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and if you haven't, come on, guys. But The Legend of Korra, you know, very connected to that franchise. It's all sort of part of the same franchise, but where does it distinguish itself? Sort of give us the baseline.
Right. So you know, Avatar: The Last Airbender, obviously highly acclaimed, really cool show. It's got that whole thing where you have the different nations, and each of them have like a type of bender, which is like a person who controls elements. So you have fire, earth, air, and water, and the Avatar is kind of the guy that, or the person that kind of keeps the peace, and also is like the bridge between the spirit world and the real world. And so Legend of Korra is basically the sequel to that. It takes place over 50 years later, and basically the Avatar has been reborn as a headstrong teenage girl named Korra, and you can kind of follow her adventures in the show, and it's gotten really good, I mean, incredible acclaim. It's really well known. It's got a very avid fan base, and so we're super excited to be working on it.
And the whole Airbender universe kind of lends itself to video games, especially action video games, the kind that Platinum excels at, you know, because you have all the elemental powers. So let's jump in right now, and we'll see some of the game in action. And sort of give us a setup for where we're going to be starting here in the demo.
Yeah, so, okay, well, before we get into it, I will note that this game is not yet done. So everything's not completely final yet, but it's in a pretty good place already, so we're definitely excited to show it. But yeah, in the actual game, so I won't give away too much. So just a few things to note. The story was written by one of the head writers on the actual show, Tim Hedrick. It was, you know, the concept was developed in tandem with the actual creators of the show, Mike and Brian. And it actually takes place within the Korra universe officially. So it's between actually the events of Book 2 and Book 3.
Okay.
So this is like, if you were following the show, I'll try not to give away too much of what happens in Book 2, but some crazy stuff goes down around Republic City.
Sure.
And we're going to see a little bit of that, so I'm just letting you know. And so we're kind of in that setting. But basically, in the story, what happened was there's this strange old guy, and she has no idea who he is, but he's basically knocked her out, and she wakes up, and she has none of her powers.
What?
They're gone. I know. Shocking, right? And so...
What kind of video game is that going to be, man? I want to bend air.
Yeah, but so basically she doesn't know what's going on. She goes to her mentor, Tenzin, who is actually Avatar Aang's son from the original series, and she is trying to figure out what's going on. So he lives at Air Temple Island, and so she goes there to try and find him. He's not there, and in fact it's been invaded by chi blockers, which were originally shown in the first book of the season, and mysteriously have reappeared. So that's kind of where she's at. She's trying to simultaneously get her bending back, as well as figure out what's going on.
And beat up some chi blockers, probably.
Exactly. So
all right, let's
check
it out.
Yep. So we're going to start in the middle of the stage. This is a demo build, so it's not 100% in context with the story.
Sure.
So it's a little bit more focused on gameplay, but
Normal.
yes, plan normal. So 3 difficulty modes.
No extreme.
Yeah. Not yet.
All right, so you know, this as Korra. So is this sort of that video game trope of she's lost all her powers? You're going to get them back one by one, learn how to use them, and then bring them all together in glorious bending harmony.
It's less that she is relearning how to use them. It's more like she's gradually gaining her power back.
Okay.
And actually, for the purposes of this demo, we've actually unlocked everything, so she doesn't actually have to get anything back in this.
Cool.
She is at full power, and actually we wanted to just run through some of the stuff she can do. But in the actual game, yeah, you'll start out with not much, and then you'll start building it back up. And it's a great way to get reintroduced to how all the different bending styles work. So,
well, it looks lovely. I mean, it's got a very crisp style that sort of you know, sort of that kind of immediate feel to it, but then of course the fluid animation of the show, and you know, I feel like when you make a translation from a show, an animated show, to a game, some things are maybe a little easier, the color palette, stuff like that, but the animations you have to come up with are so much more detailed than what you have to show, what you have to go off in the show.
Right. well, and they need to be shown from way more angles and all that stuff. And these guys can really talk to that. We'll actually show a part where they'll do a little spiel on it. But so the first thing I want to do is actually just introduce the various bending styles. So one thing that we're really excited about for the combat is that you can switch bending styles at any time. Like literally mid-combo, you can switch bending styles. And that leads to an incredible amount of depth when you have all of them together. So right now he's showing water bending. And the idea is it's primarily long range, and then it also is really good at juggling enemies while they're in the air. It has a lot of cool things like a grab where you can grab enemies and pull them towards you. You can actually turn things into ice. You can shoot ice daggers, nice. Which is really effective and it actually
from inside of a water dome.
Yeah,
naturally.
Obviously, yeah, exactly. And then next is earthbending, which is much slower but incredibly powerful and very destructive.
You're breaking stuff.
Yeah. And it's got a lot of area of effect stuff going on with it. It's also really good with knockups, so it synergizes really well with waterbending because you can knock them up and then juggle them in the air. Kind of thing. That was an earthquake move that actually staggers enemies. And then firebending. So firebending is incredibly fast. It's really focused on long combos and speed. It's also got a lot of mobility. Like you can just see him just kind of jetting around like that. So, and then airbending. And then airbending is the most versatile of all of them. It's got a little bit of everything, and we'll see it in action. But so one of the fun things, really.
It's got a little bit of everything, finishers. By which you mean also breakdancing.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, it's got a lot of area effect. It's got a lot of dash throughs, which are a bit advanced, but you can dash through guys like in midair or on the ground and continue the combo from the other side, kind of thing. It synergizes really well with other styles. So. We're just gonna,
so a lot of stuff going on in terms of, the different styles each have combos and tactics within themselves, but then because you can play them all interchangeably, that seems like really a lot of different sort of combat philosophies to fill, combat niches to fill in terms of what range, what kind of damage you're doing. Was that a little tough to all pull together? I mean, it seems like challenging to build that kind of combat system.
Sure. I think that's a question for Shirahama-san. Shirahama-san, コラの方になんかいろんな、スタイルがベンディングスタイルがあるじゃないですか。それをうまくまとまるファイティングこういったアクションゲームでうまくまとまるみたいないろいろ頑張りましたでしょうか。
そうですね。基本的にこの4つのベンディング、火と水と土。をそれぞれ特徴が違うんで、それを一つにまとめるためには結構そのコンボの技のチューニングがとっても大変でしたけど、その甲斐もあってこの自然に違うベンディングをこうスムーズにつなげることができました。
So he said, yeah, because each of the different bending styles had completely different properties. It was incredibly difficult to figure out a way to make that work. But through massive amounts of tuning, they were able to really come to a point where they were able to make them combine really smoothly together, which they're pretty excited about.
Very cool. And of course, when you're making the decisions about how these combat styles fit together, you also have to design in tandem the type of enemies you face, because that's who you're using them on. It's so important to have them demand things of you and be challenging and make you mix things up. So how did that influence your approach to designing all the enemies you face?
このゲームの中でいろんな敵も出るじゃないですか。その技を使うには敵が必要じゃないですか。そのベンディングのスタイルを考えて、それで敵を思いついたかと思うんですけど、それぞれのベンディングスタイルの特徴によって、それが敵のデザインをどう影響しましたでしょうか。
そうですね。一つのベンディングが強くなってしまわないようにするために、必ずその各ベンディングに弱点もあるわけですね。水は遠くを狙えるけど、威力は弱かったりとか、その分すぐ接近してくる敵を作るとか、で土は強いんだけど感覚が遅いんで、すごく素晴しっこい敵を作って、土を潰しに来ると。その分素晴しっこいっていう速い。その分ユーザーはうまくベンディングを敵に応じて切り替えて、プレーを楽しむことができると、そういった仕組みになっています。
So he's saying, yeah, for example, so basically all the different bending styles have their own specialties, but they also have their own weaknesses. And so a lot of the enemies are designed to kind of take advantage of those. So for example, water bending is great for long range, but doesn't do that much damage. So there are enemies that attempt to get to close distance with you really quickly. And then earth bending the same way. There are a lot of enemies that move, so it's a slower attacking type. So they've got enemies that move very quickly in order to be able to avoid it. So kind of keep the player on their toes, and kind of make it so that you can't get through the whole game just using one type of bending style.
Sure.
So they definitely have put a lot of thought into that.
Well, Shirahama-san, maybe you can go. Oh, you found an enemy to fight here. Was that indicative of the enemy being an earthbender that sort of came down and the earth smashed out?
Yep, these are the triads also make an appearance in this game, which are kind of like the mafia of the Korra world, and they're all benders. They're called the triple threat triads because there's earth, fire, and water benders. So this is one of the earthbending guys. He's pretty powerful. And yeah,
we're seeing those slow, powerful attacks
Yep.
come against Korra, but now what are we seeing right here?
He just got, so basically she got countered by him. So Korra can counter enemies, but the triads actually can counter her. And so what happens is you go into this little sequence, and if you fail it, then they end up, then you're at a huge disadvantage. But if you win it, you actually end up knocking them back. So it's kind of an interesting thing that'll take you by surprise in the middle of battle,
combat,
especially when there's more than one of them.
Is counter, like, is that you have a fire counter or a water counter, or does the counter exist sort of independently of the bending style?
It's actually independent of the bending style. So the way it works is you have a block button, and if you hit it with the perfect timing, right when they're hitting you, you'll actually counter them. Depending on the move, some moves can't be countered. Typically, lightning-based moves can't be countered, but other ones can. And so if you hit it with the right moment, you'll have a chance to basically you flip both sticks up and just knock them way back.
Wait, is earth, fire, water, air, which one is lightning?
Lightning is actually not one of the elements, so chi blockers.
Come on, man, I thought I had it
Well,
down.
I mean, technically, lightning can be used by special firebenders, but that's not where that's coming from in this game.
Okay.
Where it's coming from is there are chi blockers that actually have lightning gloves, like these gloves that use lightning, or as actual electricity, and they shock you. And so we'll see one in just a second. He's a red guy, that guy right there. So his moves cannot actually be countered, and so if he hits you, it's pretty rough. But his regular attacks can be countered. So there you go.
And then you can kick him over the moon.
Yes.
Oh, so there
That's
we see
one too.
The lightning getting a hold of him.
Yep.
All right. Well, while that's like sort of he's in a vulnerable state because you've stunned him.
Right, exactly.
Opportunity.
And there's unique finishers for each bending style, which are pretty spectacular, like the breakdancing one we saw earlier. So.
Excellent. Well, I guess I have a question that this might be for Kuroka-san. Korra, as a character, is much more feisty and passionate as compared to Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, I guess for me that was refreshing to watch when I watched some episodes of the show. How was it for you to design the game? How did you sort of go about approaching her character and making that attitude come through?
黒岡さんに質問ですが、コラのキャラって、結構熱い性格があるんじゃないですか。そういった態度があるんじゃないですか。でそのキャラをデザインしてた時にそれをどう反映しようと思ってましたでしょうか。
そうですね。熱いというか、日本でいうとおてんばというか、そういうキャラクターですね。そういうキャラクターをどうデザインするというか、今回の作品っていうのはうちのプラチナゲームズにとっては結構IP ものっていうことで、そういう制作っていうのはある意味挑戦だったんですけれども、そういったところは、ライターさんとかニコロディアンさん、原作のライターさんとかといろいろ話し合った上で決めていきましたね。
So yeah, and they kind of from a Japanese standpoint, they kind of thought of her like her personality as being kind of like a tomboy. It's kind of how they refer to it. But they considered it quite a challenge actually to try and pull that off and make it convincing. And we actually did a lot of work together with Nickelodeon and the actual writers from the show to make sure that we were hitting that feel properly. So it was kind of a challenge for them because they haven't really had to do that kind of thing before. They typically don't work with licensed games as much that have such an established world, and so
Yeah.
that was a bit of a challenge. But yeah, it was really a cooperation thing, just making sure we're on track the whole time when kind of developing her character. So
Cool.
yep.
It looks like you're anticipating a big encounter here.
Yep. So, and actually, you could see Republic City in the background before he was showing it. We're at the, this is the actual super iconic Air Temple Island, where she does a lot of training in the show. And he's got a, yes, go ahead.
この今見ていただいているステージっていうのはこの原作アニメの中でもかなり象徴的なステージになっていてファンの方であれば皆さんご存知なステージになっているんですけれども、今回当然キャラクターに関してはシェリルシェーディングで忠実にアニメを再現してます。キャラクターだけじゃなくて、各ベンディングの効果ですね、エフェクトに関してもどこから見ていただいてもアニメに負けないクオリティになってると思います。
そこまでいいんですか？
はい。すいません。
Okay, so what he's saying is, so one thing that they really focused on, and he wanted to use this place as an example, but they really worked on getting the cell shading right to just really nail the look of the show. And not only that, but it was additionally like the effects that you'll see in the game. If you look at it from any angle, they did a lot of really meticulous research in order to ensure that it was hitting like that exact look of the show. So that's one of the things that they're really proud of that achievement.
はい。で背景の方もですね、それに負けず、ここは木の寺院ですけれども、なんていうんですかね、シェーディングじゃなくてここは、結構手書き風の、アニメの原作の表現を再現、してますね。でまたファンの方は喜んでいただけると思うんですけど、ああいった屏風ですね、コーラがトレーニングしたギミックっていうのも各所に散りばめられてますんで、きっと喜んでいただけると思ってます。
So something that we think fans will really appreciate. So you'll notice in the backgrounds they actually did a lot of work to ensure that it has a kind of that hand-painted feel. You can see it like on the roofs and on the plants on the side over there. They've also included a lot of stuff that fans of the show recognize, such as you see the Bagua training portion where she needs to be the leaf and kind of dodge in order to figure out how to airbend, and so they've got a lot of iconic stuff from the show like that, so they're pretty excited about it.
Well, that's always the challenge, right? You know, you guys as game designers want to bring your own design sensibility to the game, but you also that Korra looks a certain way, she moves a certain way, she's in a certain world, so you have to kind of take that and make it your own interpretation while still remaining true to the source material.
Right.
And so, you know, Platinum Games, you guys, I feel like one of the things I love so much about your games, about Bayonetta, about Vanquish, is the immediacy of the action and the speed and just how satisfying it is as a pure play experience. So I guess what appealed to you about, well, I don't want to keep you from getting into the dramatic scene right here, but could you talk about what appealed to you about Legend of Korra? What drew you to the game to want to make it?
Yeah. じゃあそうですね。じゃあその質問直接いくんですけど、そうですね。なぜレジェンド・オブ・コーラを手掛けようと思っていたのでしょうか。
そうですね。僕の方から。
そうですね。
今回ですね、まずアクティビジョンさんの方からそういうお願いをいただいたということがまずきっかけにはなるんですけれども、まずそれ以外の理由としては、開発に至った理由としてはですね、何よりこの原作がよくできてるっていうことですね。はい、そのシナリオもものすごく細かく設定されてますし、それからアクションシーンですね。アクションシーンのアニメーションもすごく細かくスムーズに描かれてます。はい。
Okay, so he's saying, you know, originally it was brought to them by us by Activision, but you know when they saw the material, because the show doesn't, he didn't say this part, but the show doesn't actually air in Japan, so they didn't know about it when it first came out.
Okay.
So they saw the source material because we gave it to them and they were just blown away. It was just so incredibly well done. They were really impressed, and particularly the story was just incredibly well realized, and then the action was just, I mean, amazing, right? I mean, it's はい、そのアクションは、はい。
あ、そうですね。で、まあそういったところ、すごくまあ魅力的なところが多いんですね。で、まあシリアスなところも多いんですけど、結構コーラの恋愛であったり、ロマンスであったりですね。それから結構コメディというかお笑いなところもあったりとかして、非常にバランスが取れてるアニメーションだと思いました。日本では放送されてないんで最初知らなかったんですけども。はい。
So yeah, basically, so in addition to those, it also has tons of comedy. It's even got romance stuff, and it's just they were really impressed by how well balanced the show is, and it's just so they thought it was really cool.
And that's kind of something we haven't really talked about is this, I guess the story, we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but the story of the game itself, does it, but I think, are we about to enter like a little bit of a different gameplay section here? Yeah. Maybe before I ask that about the story,
okay.
Talk to me about what's going on here.
Sure.
It's the polar bear dog.
It is indeed. So Korra's riding her trusty polar bear dog, Naga. And there's various running sequences throughout the game. They're actually connected to the story. This is not an Infinite Runner, although the gameplay is kind of similar. To other Infinite Runners you may have seen.
Sure.
It's got some unique twists. One is you can actually use different bending styles, and he'll show them to you in a second. But the really cool thing is the longer you live, the longer you go without dying, the faster and faster it gets. So by the end, it's just totally nuts. So, but yeah, so this he just used a water bending ability. It's actually a shield that'll protect him from damage, and all the different elements have different abilities. Right now, we're able to use 3 out of 4. So we'll get to see a few others.
That is getting a little quicker.
Yep. And this is earthbending. So there's actually a part where you can do double jumps pretty frequently, save yourself from falling. And then we're just going to quickly show some firebending. You can actually just blow stuff up.
Seems like you're cheating
cool.
a little bit there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are cooldowns, so you do have to think about it a little bit. But yeah, so it's kind of a fun little
side question. Have you guys thought about a mini game that involves petting and cuddling with polar bear dog?
ナガ、可愛いじゃないですか。ナガを撫でるとか、可愛がるミニゲームは考えたことありますか？
それは僕はそういう発想なかったですね。
He said it never really occurred to him.
ペットのゲームじゃないんで。
It's not really a pet game, but
no, I guess it's not.
Yeah.
It's just a robot that's attacking
まあでも
you.
次回作で考えます。
リクエストがあれば。
It's saying it might be great material for a sequel, though. So something to consider.
All right, while you're fighting giant robot, sinister
Megatank.
diving megatank thing,
Yeah.
The Legend of Korra, it takes place, it's sort of a more modern setting than Avatar, The Last Airbender. It deals with some sort of issues that feel more modern, that feel a little bit more grown up.
Totally.
Is that something that the game touches on as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give away too much about the story, but I mean,
Tell me the entire thing, Robert. Tell me now.
Yeah, but probably shouldn't do that at this point. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely it feels like the show, right? The story feels like the show. It's what you would come to expect. She definitely what I can say is she definitely does spend some time dealing with the consequences of the decisions she made in book 2, particularly around what she decided to do with the spirit world.
So are people gonna
do some portals?
You guys gonna tell the game player what she did in book 2? I mean, is that sort of? It's not going to require a huge amount of knowledge of the series.
Yeah, you don't have to know everything that happened. It'll be a lot. You'll enjoy it a lot more probably if you do in general, because the events will be like, oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, if you haven't seen the show, you're gonna be fine. But it is kind of, the basic idea is it's her dealing with the decisions she made at the end of book 2 and some of the consequences of that. So what I can say is we have a unique villain that comes up in this game that was actually developed together between Platinum Games and Studio Mirror, who is the actual studio that makes the show.
Sure.
And they're really excited about showing it. It's going to be pretty cool. And it's the guy that took away her bending, so that's part of it. But
what a jerk.
Yeah.
Wow,
yes.
that's
so we
a
have
lot
some pretty cool finishers. That is the firebending finisher.
Why don't you just start off with that move? Just punch him a million times with your fire fist.
最初からそういう技をすればよかった。
弱らせないと。
Yeah, he's like, you got to build up to it.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, you guys are still working on the game, building up to the release of Legend of Korra. When is the game coming out, and for what platforms are we going to be able to play it on?
So right now it's coming out. Oh, so right now it is coming out in fall this year.
Yes.
And then the platforms are Xbox One, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and Steam.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on, showing off some Legend of Korra gameplay in action, and talking about the game here at Comic-Con. Much appreciated.
来ていただいてありがとうございます。
こちらこそありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Appreciate
All
it.
right, folks, that's The Legend of Korra coming out this fall. Take a look, keep an eye out for it, and we'll be having more news about it, of course, on GameSpot as the release approaches.